Fragrances that are more a depiction of a smell rather than being an actual perfume. Why do I find these so appealing? Hello, welcome back to Seldomly Often. I'm Daniel, today we're talking fragrances, and this is a practical review of Orto Parisi Cuoium. These reviews are for fragrances that I have a lot of experience with, multiple wears in many situations, and are meant to give you a general idea of what it feels to wear the fragrance. As per usual, I do a lot of research before buying fragrances, but I don't really like to go into details about notes and cores, as I don't think that they help the end user. I'd rather talk about the wear experience as a whole. A couple days ago, I pre-ordered the latest release by Alejandro Gualtieri, the latest release in the Orto Parisi lineup, Risveglium. By the way, I'm going to be filming and publishing an unboxing and very first sniff of the fragrance when the fragrance arrives at my doorstep. I'm very excited about that. That being said, all the hype around the new fragrance really got me into Orto Parisi mood, and I figured that it was no better time than now to finally publish my review for Orto Parisi Cuoium. You might have already seen my first impression comparison video where I compare Cuoium to Falcon Leather by Matière Première. In that video, I was already very enthusiastic about this scent, but in the following days after the review, wearing the sample, I just found myself falling more and more in love with the scent. This is an absolutely amazing fragrance. It's an absolutely amazing realistic leather fragrance, and it's actually probably one of my favorite Orto Parisis out there. In general, I feel that Alejandro Gualtieri keeps putting out banger after banger, and both of his brands, Nasomatto and Orto Parisi, just keep getting better in time. And if it wasn't clear enough from the mini reviews and from the many features on my channel, I absolutely love Alejandro Gualtieri. All of his products are absolutely amazing. To me, he's basically one of the best perfumers in modern times. He's such a creative genius, especially in the marketing department. And as I always mention in my Alejandro Gualtieri reviews, the marketing for his fragrances are critical to the brand, critical to sales, and actually, in my opinion, even critical to better understand the products and his creations as a whole. Both of Alejandro Gualtieri's brands are very popular in niche perfumery. They're incredibly recognizable, and they're just overall staples in the genre. They're especially popular in Italy, and I was listening to a podcast recently where the hosts were discussing the fact that Alejandro Gualtieri's products in general are not considered niche anymore just because they're so incredibly popular. Again, specifically in Italy. In Italy, Megamare, for example, is one of the most known and better known fragrances in niche perfumery. It's so known, in fact, that even if you have a slight interest in perfumery, you probably heard about Megamare, you probably heard that it's a beast mode fragrance, and everyone is wearing it just because it's so trendy. In the US and in the English-speaking market more in general, I don't think that Alejandro Gualtieri has that much traction. Yes, the fragrances are very recognizable, everyone pretty much knows what these are, but they're seen as statement pieces, not very wearable. They're all kind of edgy and stinky, and I'm not really sure how many people are actually out there wearing this stuff on a day-to-day basis. And when they say that Alejandro Gualtieri's products, due to the immense popularity of his brands, don't really represent niche anymore, I don't really agree. It's not because of the popularity or lack of thereof, but it's because Alejandro Gualtieri puts in so much creativity, intent, thought, irony, sarcasm in his products that basically he almost represents a category of his own. To me, Alejandro Gualtieri is the perfect representation of niche. He makes products that are just incredibly artistic and incredibly thought-provoking. And I want to go back to what I said before when I said that Alejandro Gualtieri's brands keep getting better and better. I feel that this is due to the fact that he's gaining awareness, he's gaining lucidity on the market, he knows what he wants to do, and he just puts in so much more thought. Yes, they're still a little bit chaotic, they're still a little bit messy, but overall they feel more purposeful. And Cuoium, to me, is one of the best releases by Orto Parisi because of that, because it's so directional, it's so focused. And I'm super excited about Risveglium because that, to me, really represents almost like a shift in mindset by Alejandro Gualtieri. Even the word itself, Risveglium, means awakening, and it feels like he finally got more awareness of what he's doing and what his purpose is in this industry. Before we go into the anatomy of Cuoium, let me just touch upon Alejandro Gualtieri one last time. As you may know, both of his brands, Nasomatto and Orto Parisi, are both known to be very edgy, animalic, provocative, ironic, and very sexual in nature. And the interesting part is that this whole imagery and narrative really seems to be driving sales. People seem to be attracted to the stinky. People seem to be attracted to the edgy. And this, again, is no new thing, no new surprise. One of the best sellers from État Libre d'Orange is Sécrétion Magnifique, deemed to be one of the stinkiest fragrances in existence, one of the most edgy fragrances in existence. And Alejandro Gualtieri really takes that horse and rides it to victory with Cuoium, because this one here is definitely a fragrance that still heavily relies on his narrative and vision. And if it wasn't apparent enough by the packaging and the appearance of the bottle, Cuoium means leather. This is first and foremost a leather fragrance. It's a very different leather fragrance from the usual sensual, elegant leathers out there. This represents the dirty side of leather. This represents the animalic side of leather. This represents an old, worn, torn, crackly, used up, dry leather with so much narrative and so much storytelling. This one here, once again, is inspired by Alejandro Gualtieri's grandfather, and more specifically is inspired by his shoes. When you watch the official presentation video for Cuoium, you're basically presented the narrative in reverse, the narrative of the life of the shoe in reverse. But surprisingly enough, when you wear this fragrance, actually that reverse narrative makes total sense, and it's actually what is presented to you in smell form. But we're going to talk about the wear experience and scent profile after we cover the presentation. You already know my opinion because I've talked about this ad nauseum. Presentation-wise, Alejandro Gualtieri's products are absolutely amazing. The Orto Parisi line all comes into this very simple looking box. I actually really like it. It's super environmental friendly, very, very recyclable, and it opens in a very unique way. They have this sort of like origami style, which kind of like opens up like that. The fragrance is basically held down by this cardboard cage. Everything is, again, incredibly well designed, incredibly well put together. I really like the overall style. I really like the cardboard, the raw cardboard feel. It just matches Orto Parisi's brand so well. I don't usually feature boxes, but this one here was sort of lying around, so I decided to pick it up and show it to you guys because I think it's super cool. When it comes to the bottle itself, Cuoium really differentiates itself from the rest of the Orto Parisi line, mainly for one feature: it's wrapped in leather. No other bottle from the Orto Parisi line has something so particular, so peculiar. With this one here, I guess he really wanted to go all in with the leather vibe and leather imagery. I think it looks super cool overall. It looks incredibly niche. It looks very, very artisanal. That being said, it kind of bugs me that this is the only bottle in the line that features this level of customization and personalization. It just looks a little bit weird and inconsistent, especially because it's not a new trend. Risveglium will feature the same bottle design as the old ones. Bottle side, which we'll get to in a moment, one of the more defining characteristics of Orto Parisi as a brand are definitely the caps. The caps are super cool, super unique. They vary fragrance to fragrance, and they really accentuate what the fragrance is all about. This one here specifically looks like an iron cap, kind of rusted off, kind of battered. It feels like it's part of some sort of a utensil or something like that. Like it's part of a hammer, like an old-fashioned hammer. The top of the cap for Orto Parisi fragrances usually feature an inlay which extends the storytelling. Cuoium features a piece of leather with an embossing, basically depicting an old-school shoe anvil. Again, really reinforcing the shoemaker vibe and the shoe inspiration. Atomizers for the Orto Parisi fragrances are good but not great. I wish they were as good as the Nasomatto ones. Those are basically top tier, super well pressurized, super well diffusive, a joy to use. This one here is a little bit more of a standard action. Let's give it a couple sprays. By the way, I've been wearing this fragrance as my scent of the day. Easy on the sprays because it's very, very potent, very, very powerful, and quite edgy. Given the very particular scent profile, I've been sort of testing this at work, slowly ramping up the sprays. I started off with one and it went completely under the radar. 2 sprays seem to be fine. Today I went with 3, still no questions, still no weird looks. I think that this in the air especially comes across as way more likable, way more pleasing than one would think it is. But going back to the presentation, the cap attaches to the bottle via friction. It's fairly solid, fairly stable. You can easily pick up the bottle from the cap. The sleeve itself that is on the bottle is nice, it's well made. It feels like leather. It doesn't feel fake or anything like that, but it doesn't feel like the highest quality leather. It also kind of smells like leather, and that is a huge part of the intent for this fragrance. This is a really cool addition. Again, in isolation, without comparing it to the other bottles, this is super cool. I really like the overall look of the bottle. Embossed onto this leather jacket or sleeve for the fragrance, you see the Orto Parisi logo, which is basically roots. These roots really represents going back to tradition, going back to the nature world. It's such a beautifully well-crafted, well thought out theme. The bottom of the bottle is transparent, easily allowing you to see the liquid content, which is always good. Price-wise, Orto Parisi is very well priced in my opinion. These run officially for 155 euros, which is pretty good considering that for 50 ml bottles you get a lot of wears because these are very, very potent and long lasting. The Nasomatto bottles are 30 ml and those are Extract de Parfum, Orto Parisi, or actually Eau de Parfum. But again, price-wise, very, very good. These are also popular and widespread enough so that they can be found at discounters at a fraction of the price. I think that the best price I've seen for Cuoium is around $100, which is absolutely amazing, especially again, given the craftsmanship, given the uniqueness, and given the potency of the scent. It's an absolutely must-buy. Excellent, excellent value for money overall. But it's time to talk about the scent profile and wear experience for Orto Parisi Cuoium. What does this actually smell like? As I mentioned before, this is first and foremost a leather fragrance, a very dirty and animalic, skanky leather, very direct in imagery, very straightforward. It's relatively simple in concept and in execution, and it's very, very different from other leathers out there, especially the more elegant leathers, the ones that add supporting notes to really alleviate the leather roughness. Think about Tuscan leather by Tom Ford. That is a saffron-based leather, which by the way, this is not. But it also features a lot of red berries, a lot of fruitiness to really cut through the leather roughness and to make it more palatable. If you also think about something like Ombre Nomad, another very popular leather, that one also follows suit with Tuscan leather. It adds a very bright raspberry up top, really giving the scent much more likability, much more mass appealingness, while still keeping a little bit of that masculine grittiness from the rough leather. This one here has no fruitiness up top. It's very direct. This is basically purely a leather scent. And I've reviewed in the past, I've talked about in the past other leather fragrances which were pretty pure. One of them being Falcon Leather by Matière Première, which I compared it to in my first impression comparison video, as I mentioned. The other one being Noir Kogan by Armani Privé. Those two, though, are very much saffron-based leather scents. As I said, this one is not really, or at least it's not apparently saffron-based. Alejandro Gualtieri, for both of his brands, Nasomat and Orto Parisi, is known for not disclosing notes, and I really like this aspect because it really allows the user, the wearer, to really immerse themselves into the story in the narration without trying to deconstruct the fragrance, without being too nerdy about it. And when people ask me why I tend to keep the notes discussion very, very surface level, I always give the same example. Imagine going to a very high-end restaurant with a curated menu with curated food, and you're there eating the food, but instead of sitting back and truly enjoying it, you're there pondering which ingredient has been used in which percentage in your dish. It takes so much poetry out of the culinary experience, and in this case, out of fragrances. Sometimes it's fun to visualize the individual notes, but I'm not into obsessively deciphering a fragrance, and I really applaud Alejandro Gualtieri for just taking that decision out of our hands. But going back to Cuoium, I said that this is a very different leather fragrance from your usual mass appealing leather accords. And that is because basically this is built upon smoke and resins. It's not saffron heavy, there's no fruit, there's no likable component in here. It's actually a very animalic leather fragrance that is meant to depict, again, the life of the shoe. And I said that the smell of this kind of represents the inverse life of the shoe. And in the official video for this, there's some guy that uncovers a shoe from the dirt. They dig it up from the ground, they bring it in, they analyze it, and they start polishing it and they start restoring it. And this actually really represents the scent profile and wear experience for this fragrance. It comes across as very animalic at first. It has definite poopy, pissy components, very barnyard in a way. It does smell like animal. It smells like a frightened animal in a way. And as the scent dries down, you start losing those animalics and the leather component gets more and more refined. Basically, reversing the age life of a shoe. A shoe is born nice, pristine, well made, and then gradually gets torn, worn, and more dirty. This one here is basically the inverse. You start animalic, it dries down, and it becomes cleaner and cleaner, and more mass appealing and more likable. And although the wear experience for this fragrance is pretty linear with not much transition or evolution top to bottom, the main difference is this animalic note. It starts off strong, it starts off pungent, and then it fades off. And the fading of this animalic note really drives the narrative. It's really, really strange. And basically, this scent profile is meant to represent Alessandro Gualtieri's grandfather's shoes in a very rustic way. Apparently, Gualtieri's grandfather made those shoes himself. He only had that pair and wore them excessively day in, day out throughout his day-to-day activities, which involved a lot of handwork, a lot of rural work in the fields. Trampling earth, trampling ground, trampling feces, feeding the animals, doing yard work, everything. Basically, all his life got embedded into this leather. And when in the video, the guy pulls out these shoes, that's basically the end of life of the shoe. And they're fully embedded with this animalic component, with this massive storytelling, with all these notes. I'm picturing this damp, wet shoe coming out of the soil, maybe because of the humidity of the soil itself, but the scent comes across as very diffusive, very evaporative. It has this pissy ammonia component that really elevates the scent profile and bringing it up in the mid-tone of the tone range, making it relatively wearable in pretty much every season. Again, wearable is a little bit of a strange word because this fragrance is definitely animalic, it's definitely pungent, it's definitely rough. But season-wise, I do feel that this would wear great in the summer. It has this stinky, rustic, primal, raw feel that really blends in with the skin chemistry. There's something about this that kind of reminds me of Luxor in a way. In my first impression of Luxor by Xerjoff, I mentioned that that scent profile had this weird binding effect on the skin, making your skin smell kind of like that. This one here follows suit. You end up smelling yourself like this. It's not necessarily a fragrance. It's a very strange wear experience because it's very involving. You feel very much part of the story. Really amazing. It's definitely not for everyone because this comes across as primal, very raw, very down to earth, literally, but it's also fairly natural smelling. It's a dirtiness that feels human. It feels, I don't know, it feels credible, feels realistic. When you wear something like Ombre Nomade, given the massive projection, massive presence of that scent, it feels like you're wearing perfume. This one here, by contrast, feels more like a natural extension of the human bodily odor. Not in a bad way. It's very masculine, very primal, very visceral. It has almost this pheromone type of effect, very diffusive. It's not bold by any means. This is a fairly subtle scent and wear experience overall, but it has this specific presence. It has this sort of a permeating fog that really fills up environments. It's absolutely gorgeous. I love wearing this. It puts me in such a relaxing mood. This one here on me wears very similarly to something like Amouage Silver Oud. That one is a lot more elegant, but they both trigger this very primal, raw, visceral sort of emotional response. It's incredibly comforting, and I love ending the day with this. As I mentioned before, as the hours go by within the wear experience of Cuoium, and by the way, the longevity on this is absolutely phenomenal, the scent becomes more and more refined, more and more clean, more and more rid of that animalic component. In the deepest of dry down, you really detect a nice subtle sweetness. Maybe it's coming from some sort of an amber, maybe some sort of a vanilla. These sweet notes are accompanied by a very faint muskiness, giving the whole scent profile a warm, furry blanket sort of feeling. Again, as I said, it's a beautiful way to end the evening. I could talk about the scent profile and wear experience for the scent for hours, but it's time to touch upon some practicality, starting off with performance. As I said, the longevity for Cuoium is absolutely phenomenal. This is easily a 12 to 14 hour scent. It's subtle. The projection is not massive, except for maybe the very first start, but it permeates a long time. It permeates on your skin for so long, it basically becomes part of you. As I said, it has this weird, special bonding effect to your skin. You end up smelling like this. It's always detectable, even in the skin scent phase, just because it comes across as an extra layer of animalic dirtiness to your skin. And I know that said like this, it sounds disgusting, but it comes across as so incredibly natural, like a natural pheromone, like a natural human smell, like the smell of a man working in the field, working with earth, working with raw materials, and coming in the evening after a day of work under the sun. The skin is warm, and you have this incredibly sexy masculine aura permeating the persona. The overall wear curve and projection curve for this fragrance could be a little bit better tuned. As I said, it starts off pretty loud, but it immediately falls off a cliff after about 1 hour of wear. It's a little bit jarring. I wish it would be a little bit more linear, a little bit more gradual. I wish that Alejandro Gualtieri would have taken a page out of Liz Moore's book. She's a master at killing wear experiences and projection curves. When talking actual versatility in use cases, I'm afraid to say that Cuoium is not that great. This is more of a personal experience scent. This is more of a meditative type of scent. Its stinky animalic nature means that it's not necessarily mass appealing whatsoever. You have to have a very strong personality in order to properly pull this off. But I would definitely say that it's more of a special occasion sort of scent. That being said, given the fact that it's fairly neutral in the tonal range, it comes across as surprisingly functional, especially when looked at through a very pragmatic lens that excludes the animalic component, that excludes any likability issues. You could probably wear this in many situations, day to night, and pretty much in every season. It's deep and dark enough to really cut through the cold of winter, but it's not heavy, it's not too heavy to be worn in the summer. Actually, the summer, the heat would probably really complement the scent profile, as I said, for Luxor by Xerjoff, because it would really emphasize the masculine pheromone muskiness of this scent, really complementing that raw, dirty, work in the field sort of masculine vibe. Going back to being completely honest though, given the relatively extreme scent profile of this fragrance, you kind of need to severely dress it up to really complement the stink factor. Dressed up, it would probably provide an amazing contrast. It would come across as very mysterious, very dark, very alluring, super interesting, but you need to have the confidence to properly pull this off. I can totally see a guy dressed up in a tuxedo wearing Cuoium. It would come off as super edgy, really, really cool. Demographics wise, given the fact that this is so abstract, it kind of transcends everything. But in my opinion, it does lean a little bit more masculine, given how dirty, stinky, sweaty, and sort of musky and directly leathery this comes across. If you're a woman and you like this sort of smell, by all means, give it a shot, but not really advised. I can't even picture in my head a woman smelling like this. It would definitely be interesting and a cool experiment. I would love to see how this scent evolves on a woman's skin, but overall, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. Age-wise, given how abstract this can be worn by anyone and no one. You definitely have to be into niche perfumery, experimental perfumery, and more into statement piece style of perfumery. If you're that person, you can get this and you can probably enjoy it. But if you're looking for like a daily scent, something a little bit more edgy to wear on a daily basis, this will probably not be for you, especially if you're comparing this to ombre leather or Tuscan leather or to ombre nomade or stuff along those lines. When it comes to imagery and narration, Orto Parisi is basically second to none. This fragrance is incredibly evocative, incredibly narrative. It's not necessarily traditional in storytelling. There's no sequence of events. You just get this very beautiful image and just appreciation for natural compounds and components. The leather comes in contact with the earth. There's a little bit of muskiness, there's a little bit of sweat, there's age, there's life events. Everything comes together to give you this incredibly deep and rich storytelling experience. It really transcends time, and in a way it kind of feels like a relic. It's beautiful. Maybe I'm biased by the video, by the marketing. I just like the way Alejandro Gualtieri really conveys a story, a thought, an emotion, a feeling. It's super powerful. When it comes to these sort of products, I actually really enjoy being taken for a ride by the marketing, by the forced narration. But if you wear them enough, you'll form your own stories and own memories. It's absolutely gorgeous. All right, we're at the part of the video where I give you some options for my reviewed fragrance. In the case of Cuoium, I really wanted to leverage the raw primal feeling, the experience that the fragrance really conveys to me. The first fragrance that I want to showcase is Black Knight by Francesca Bianchi. I've showcased this various times in the past. This is an absolutely beautiful leather fragrance, which again comes across as medieval. It comes across as rustic, rugged, dirty, and just overall very, very narrative. A very saffron heavy depiction of leather, which also has a balsamic note, maybe a little bit of violet, maybe a little bit of herbaceousness. It's a traditional Chypre construction, very, very strong at the start. It dries down to a very beautiful, musky floral. The dry down is super surprising on this because you wear it and you're like, wow, this is super potent, very, very strong leather. And then after time passes, it just like silently fades into this beautiful, sensual, floral, musky sort of feeling. It clearly has the Francesca Bianchi DNA, it clearly has her signature, but within the brand, this is actually a standout to me. It's one of my favorites. It's the one that I like the most, and I've been showcasing it so much because I like it so much. The other ones are a little bit hit or miss. Some of the fragrances are absolutely amazing, but Black Knight to me is a very, very strong recommendation. Get your nose on this, give it time to sink its teeth into you, and you'll discover a true gem within the leather fragrance world. The second fragrance that I want to showcase is not only one of my favorites from the brand, but it's actually one of my favorites in general. We're talking about Meo Fusciuni Varanasi. I've been wearing a lot of this these past winter months. It's such a beautiful, emotional fragrance. It perfectly depicts the city of Varanasi, or at least my idea of the city of Varanasi. I've never been there. And I don't know, it's such a trip. This is also incredibly transitioning. It opens up very, very stinky. This is one of the most animalic fragrances in my collection. It's very directly resembling the smell of poop, piss, maybe death. Varanasi is a city that is known to be connected with death or the celebration of death or life in general. And it's incredible because the stinky aspect of this not only is fairly well tailored and it's incredibly addicting and very, very interesting, but again, this scent also offers an immense transition top to bottom. And this one here too goes down to this beautiful, soft floral. The dry down for this is very light and very floral. There's no muskiness, there's no heaviness. It's much more your typical Meo Fusciuni's poetic style. It's an incredibly transportative and narrative fragrance, basically starting off with showing you the city, which is loud, saturated, colorful, vibrant, stinky, just overwhelming in every way. But then as you let the city sink in, as you explore the city, talk to the people, and just visit India as a whole, you start to find this appreciation found in the beautiful dry down. It becomes such a romantic memory. When you finally leave India, you have this beautiful memory of a wonderful experience there. This is a representation of Meo Fusciuni's trip to India, and it perfectly matches his storytelling. I love wearing this so much, even though I've never been to Varanasi or India, but the storytelling arc in this is just so relatable. Sometimes first impressions can be very violent, very overwhelming, just too much. And as you start to know a certain situation, maybe a person, maybe an environment, you start to warm up to it and you start appreciating the fine nuances and the fine details. This perfectly depicts that sort of feeling, that sort of adjustment period. It's absolutely gorgeous. I could not conclude my option list without my usual oddball. This one here is a doozy. We're talking about Dark Souls by Alejandro Acosta. This is a very strong, very strange perfume that I got recently and I'm still warming up to. I got it because it's inspired by a video game series, one of my favorite video game series of all time, Dark Souls. It's basically a medieval fantasy game, and this fragrance covers all those bases. It's incredibly primal, very stinky. It kind of reminds me of Black Knight by Francesca Bianchi, but it turns the volume up to 20, not to 11, to 20. It's super loud, super stinky. There's a lot of natural oud in here. There's a lot of leathery facets. There's a lot of metallicness. It's not meant to be a wearable fragrance. It's far beyond that. This is basically an art piece. Not only an artsy statement piece, fragrance-wise, but an actual piece of art itself. These are actually first and foremost pieces of art by Alejandro Acosta. The fragrance heads for these bottles are all done by hand, exclusive one from another. They all look differently. These are all limited editions, limited runs. And when I saw this on the local Parfumo marketplace, I just had to jump on it. It's such a unique piece. It's such a fun thing. I really like having this. Not only it really represents that video game, which I'm very attached to, but the scent profile itself is also super interesting and right up my alley. Very animalic, very edgy, very metallic, very, very strange. Not necessarily super wearable, but again, given the fact that it's a limited edition, given its price, and given the fact that it's only 30 ml, I plan to really cherish this and really wear it sparingly and occasionally. It's super cool. I know it's not a practical mention that anyone can just go out and buy. I just wanted to showcase this because it's really fun and the world of perfumery never ceases to amaze me. But back to Orto Parisi Cuoium for my final recommendations and overview. What do I think about this scent? I love it. I love it, and I think it's actually one of the better Orto Parisis out there. It's very, very unique, and Alejandro Gualtieri is a little bit known to be recycling ideas and scent profiles. A lot of his scents smell similar. Take, for example, Black Afghano and Terroni. They have a very strong DNA in common. This one here smells different from all other Orto Parisis, all other Nasomattos. There's no real tie-in. Some people on Parfumo and Fragrantica say that this smells like Nudiflorum. I have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. This has zero flowery aspect. It's so much darker, so much deeper. Yes, Nudiflorum has a slight leather aspect to this, but it smells absolutely nothing like this. So I don't know what people are smoking. This is very, very unique. It's so directional, so intentional, so well thought out. I really like the idea. I really like the execution. I just like Alejandro Gualtieri in general. And I can really recommend this if you're a fan of the house, if you're a fan of leathers, if you want something more animalic, something darker. It does resemble some other stuff if you really, really squint. I think that the easiest comparison is actually Nishanez Africa Olifant, but this one here takes the animal component and just like turns it up in volume. It's very, very interesting. I love wearing this. It's so relaxing, so meditative, so comforting in a way. But again, I'm a little bit weird. I like stinky stuff. Your mileage may vary. This overall is definitely not mass appealing. It's not designed for that. This is designed to be a statement piece in typical Alejandro Gualtieri style. And Alejandro Gualtieri in general gets a lot of criticism because of the way he designs his fragrances. They do come across as a little bit synthetic and messy. Some people say that they're basically synthetic bombs, that they're not really high quality. Maybe, maybe not. It's not really the point of it. Alejandro Gualtieri is first and foremost a marketing master, an artist. He creates products in the form of fragrance that really drive a point, that really communicate something. He is a means to an end person. He uses the compounds, he uses the materials that really facilitate that sort of communication. He has an immense sense of irony and sarcasm. His perfumes are not meant for the ingredient nerds. He actually sort of makes fun of them. And he's just such a troll. He's like the troll of the fragrance community. I love him so much just because of that. And again, I have a very strong affinity with Orto Parisi, with Nasomatto. They're some of the brands that I explore the most, which I know the most. I know his DNA, I know his style. He's such a cool person. I can't recommend this fragrance enough just because of that. For those who share my same taste in perfumery, this is probably a blind buy. For everyone else, do not blind buy this. I repeat, do not. This is a very, very strong sample first. It's interesting, it's fun, but you need to kind of know what it is. You need to have expectations set. This is a stinky leather fragrance that is more of a statement piece. If you're looking for wearable fragrances, mass appealing fragrances, this is not it. Alejandro Gualtieri is not it. Alejandro Gualtieri is an artist that I really look up to, and the fragrance world could use a lot more of this. A lot more charisma, a lot more creativity, a lot more innovation, fun factor, irony, tongue-in-cheek humor, and just overall sarcasm. Masterpiece for me. If you like this type of content, if you like my approach to video, feel free to subscribe. It's always massively appreciated and it helps the channel. If you want to interact with me, leave a comment, suggestion, opinion, or anything else down below. I always reply and I always keep the conversation open. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for your time. It's never taken for granted. Many more fun videos coming, many more fun reviews as per usual. See you in the next one and cheers.